resuming our regular weekly chairman's updates. We had a little bit of a break there because of the national convention back in Milwaukee. I did not do a proper chairman's update from the Milwaukee convention, though I did do that roll call vote speech where we talked about some of our initiatives here in Washington, and that went very well. Got some national play in the media, and people at the convention wanted to talk about our initiatives the whole convention. They were coming up and talking to me, so that was a good win. But now we resume our regular Chairman's Weekly updates, and of course we've been looking at the Washington State Republican Party's platform that was passed and enacted at our state convention in Spokane a couple of months ago. Each of the last several weeks, many weeks, we've been taking one or two sections of the platform and talking about them in some detail so you know what they are. And then, of course, we attach in the comments section under these videos the print, the type, the actual language from the sections of the platform. Today we're talking about sections 13 and 14 of the Washington State Republican Party platform, a total of 18 sections. But sections 13 and 14 do kind of go together. Section 13 talks about property rights, and Section 14 talks about protecting agriculture and natural resources. So they do kind of go together, at least in our minds they do. Section 13 reviews the nature of property rights and makes the strong statement that the protection of property rights, the recognition of individual property rights is important to good government here in Washington State and really everywhere. As some of you who are history buffs know, our Declaration of Independence talks about the rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. When Thomas Jefferson wrote that document, he was referencing earlier works by Adam Smith and some others that talked about the essential rights of any human being were life, liberty, and property. Jefferson replaced property with the pursuit of happiness. He felt philosophically that was a bigger, broader term. But the three essential liberties that Smith and others have talked about were life, liberty, and property. And so it's been a strong philosophical basis of constitutional law and of what today we call conservative political philosophy, that life and liberty and property, the right to own and control personal property, are the linchpins of civil society and good government and the essential liberties that any person wants to live a good life. And it's always important to protect property. People on the extreme left, your Marxists and socialists, they don't like the idea that protecting individual property rights is an important aspect of any good government. They don't believe in personal property rights, but we do. And personal property rights mean more than just the ability to own property, real estate or other. It's the ability to own and keep control of the things that are important to you, both financially and spiritually, and in connection with your local community. We feel that property rights actually are what defines community, real community, not politically driven or government created community, but real community. It's where people who own property have interest in cooperating with one another to protect that property, to maximize the value of that property, have a reason to come together voluntarily in cooperation with one another to help protect each other's property rights, to help protect commerce and business between them and among them. This is important stuff. And we believe that protecting property rights really protects civil society at large and good government. And in our state, in Washington, we've been very bad in the last few decades about eroding property rights. While people can still own personal property in the state, of course, our state regulates things like water usage, things like development through the Growth Management Act, and restrictions on how people can build on property they own or subdivide and split up property they own among children or other family members. We think we need to get Washington back on track to protect property rights. That means creating a more flexible system of water rights and water usage here. That means, in our opinion, either modifying or getting rid of the state's Growth Management Act, which restricts the ability of property owners to use their property, to build on their property. And in general, the permitting process for building or developing real estate assets in this state of Washington is terrible. You've probably heard the numbers. In some places, before you even begin to build a house, you have to pay some $30,000 or $40,000 in permitting fees. We think all of that needs to be reformed. Those costs need to be reduced. The Growth Management Act restrictions, they need to be gotten rid of in order to let people use their property. The next section of the party platform deals with the protection of agriculture and natural resources. One of the great things about living in Washington is that our state has substantial natural resources, assets that are held in the public trust, that are held for the public. We have timberland, public timberland in this state that is managed and harvested with the idea of generating non-tax money for the state government and for local governments. For generations, Washington funded its K-12 schools with the proceeds, with the money generated by harvesting timber and turning it into lumber and doing that from publicly owned timberland. We've completely screwed up that good process in the last 30 or 40 years. We manage our natural resources and oversee our agricultural activities in Washington through two different state agencies. We have a State Department of Agriculture. The Secretary of Agriculture at the state level is appointed by the governor. And separate of the Department of Agriculture, we have the Department of Natural Resources, DNR. DNR is headed up by a separately elected statewide executive, the Commissioner of Public Lands. So our State Department of Agriculture has an appointed secretary appointed by the governor, and DNR has an elected commissioner who is elected separately of the governor. The last few commissioners of public lands overseeing DNR, and they're in charge of managing those public timberlands, have been disasters, just unmitigated disasters, and have run our good public timberland system into the ground so it does not produce that non-tax revenue for schools and libraries and other public uses. We need a commissioner of public lands who will restore the healthy management and, yes, harvesting of trees from our public timberland. We're blessed this election cycle with an opportunity to elect a better commissioner of public lands. And Republicans have two good candidates. The endorsed candidate from our state convention is Sue Keel Peterson, a natural resources scientist by training. And also running, but not getting that endorsement at the convention, is Jaime Herrera Beutler, the former Congress member. Both of these women would be much better than the last several commissioners of public lands because they would get our working assets working again. We look forward to seeing what you, the people, decide in that race in the upcoming state primary. The State Department of Agriculture, under the appointment of the governor, is more a overseeing and supporting bureaucracy of agriculture production in the state. They don't actually manage assets the way that DNR does. And the performance of the Department of Agriculture has been a little better in recent years. They are supportive of our ag industry and ag resources here, although they get caught sometimes in the weird politics of things like pulling dams from the Snake or Columbia rivers, something we don't support. Generally, we need to protect natural resources, but that doesn't mean not use them. That means use them in a smart and professionally managed way to the benefit of the people of Washington. That goes for our public timberlands as well as our government involvement with agriculture production here in our state. I think agriculture production is taken for granted in Olympia too often, and we could do a better job with our bureaucracy at the State Department of Agriculture in supporting ag production in our state. That's it for this week. A little review of sections 13 and 14, our take on property rights and protecting natural resources and agriculture in Washington. Again, we will put the language of the platform in the comments section underneath this, and we'll get back on track in the next couple of weeks and finish up our discussion of our state party's platform for 2024. Until then, stay strong and be well.